Hello everyone. If you'd like to make your way to your seats, we'll get the next portion started.
Lights, eh? Hey, how are you? Not there? Wait now? Oh, great. Couldn't be better. Can't see anybody?
Nope. Perfect. All right. Good morning, everyone. All right. Welcome, everyone, and thank you, Premier King, for joining us for our little conversation today. Our members are very grateful for your time as we share some insights and priorities of your government as it relates to the economic recovery and growth of our province. Before we begin, the Chamber would like to recognize that the land upon which we gather is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. They have occupied this land for over 12,000 years. We honor the treaties of peace and friendship, which recognize Mi'kmaq title and established an ongoing relationship between nations. We are all treaty people. We have certainly had a tiring 2 years of the pandemic, but now we're looking ahead, and our members are eager to get back to some business. And I'd like now to formally introduce our Premier before we get started. Dennis King grew up in Georgetown, graduating from Montague Regional High School in 1990. After studying journalism in Ontario, he returned to PEI, knowing that he wanted to live, work, and raise a family here. His first full-time job was a reporter with the Eastern Graphic, before moving on to be editor of the Island Farmer and Atlantic Fish Farming publications, earning several journalism awards. He later joined provincial government, working in communications, and eventually serving as director of communications for Premier Pat Binns. During those years, he gained a keen insight into how government operates and how it impacts people's lives. He later worked as Director of Communications and Business Development with the Mi'kmaq Confederacy of Prince Edward Island and as Executive Director of the PEI Seafood Processors Association. In 2013, he embraced entrepreneurship, starting his own communications business. He later joined forces with public affairs company M5, providing strategic advice to a range of clients. Dennis and his wife, Jana, are proud parents of Jacob, Camden, and Callum, and live in Brookfield. And welcome, Mr. Premier.
Thank you very much, Bill. It's great to be here.
Excellent.
It's great to be here.
Good.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.
This chair is really slumpy.
We don't want you too comfortable, I guess.
have really bad posture at the best of times, and this chair is not helping. So
I'm figuring out what to do with my feet.
yeah,
It's okay.
exactly.
Okay, so we have a few questions for you based on what our members have been thinking, and without further ado, I guess we'll get started. We'll turn the screws too
Well, I've
hard
been
here. So.
facing it for 10 weeks now in the legislature, so we'll do the best we
There
can.
you go.
How about that? Okay.
All right, Premier King, you're now a full 3 years into your mandate as Premier. It has been a challenging time for all Islanders with so much uncertainty. But we're headed in the right direction. Many of us want to stop focusing on COVID-19 and get back to business. As we look ahead towards economic recovery and eventual growth, where do you feel the economy is at?
I think I would begin that it's been an incredible 2 years for everybody. I mean, 3 in this job, but 2 in particular, and 2 plus in COVID. And while we're all tired of COVID, we still have to keep our eye on that because we need to learn to live with it, and we're doing that. But we still don't have enough distance between the pandemic and what we know and where we're going to go. But I do think overall the economy has performed very well. We've probably outperformed what we thought when we looked back March 2020. At that particular time, we had ready to budget, a surplus budget, and then COVID hit and we scrapped that budget and we tabled another budget trying to react and anticipate to the best we can, or the best we could at the time. So the factors are that we continue to lead the country in GDP growth. Our housing starts are up. Our building construction is up. All of the important factors are trending in the right direction. We still lead the country in immigration and population growth per capita. So we have a lot of really, really good things that are happening here in spite of the challenges with COVID. But having said that, our agriculture industry in particular has been stressed with the potato wart crisis. Our tourism sector has been operating at about half at best of what it has been, and I think there's a pent-up demand for people to get moving around and to get started again, so I'm optimistic, but I think overall, if you would have asked Minister Compton, who's here I believe, if you would have asked in March 2020 that after we had put together the budget we did, that we'd be sitting here on this stage in 2022 and saying that all of these factors were still climbing and our economy was growing, I would have said that we would have considered that a considerable victory, and I think we all should, because we're in a relatively good place for what's to come.
Okay, no, fair point. I guess that kind of leads into the next question, which is to do with the cost of living, which goes along with some of those good things you just spoke about. So it comes as no surprise to you or anyone in the room the impact that inflation has been having on the cost of living and the cost of doing business, whether it's been pandemic related, supply shortages, the war in Ukraine now, working towards higher fuel prices and the cost of diesel, which affects seemingly every industry. Islanders have experienced the highest inflation in the country, and based on last month's calculation of 8.9%, it doesn't appear to be slowing down. So inflation is higher today than it has been in 3 decades. We know there's no real silver bullet to fix everything, but something has to be done if island workers and businesses want to be able to afford everyday necessities and stay afloat. So what can or is the provincial government going to do to tackle the growing inflation and make life more affordable for Islanders?
Yeah, I mean, that is certainly something that we've been dealing with for the last number of months, really. When we look really through the history of 3 years here, we had, the pandemic, which has been thrust upon us. We had the potato wart crisis, and now I think we have what is probably best termed a cost of living crisis, to be honest. And these things have been kind of thrust upon us. I mean, I don't have a whole lot of leverage or control over international monetary policy. The volatility that the war in Ukraine is having on, worldwide oil prices. About half the fertilizer for agriculture comes from Russia. So there are lots of things that we can't control. But we're trying to, use the levers that we have to try to make life a little bit easier and to try to shield Islanders from some of the immediate impacts, along the same role of trying to instill some changes overall that will help change the attitudes and the approach that we all take. So we've had a cabinet committee that has been working on this for a number of months. We initially, you probably heard a lot about, we initially announced the $20 million relief for cost of living. It sounds silly to say, but giving money away for government is harder than one would think. In particular, since we've harmonized the tax, a lot of the taxation policy, or all of the taxation policy and direction, and including the distribution of money, comes through the federal government. So we don't maintain, like we would have 10 years ago, that database of Islanders' information. We met with Chrystia Freeland and talked with others, and we thought we could get the money out quickly in 30 days, but it's going to take a little bit longer than that to get some direct money out. But we're rolling out a number of programs, and we'll do so probably Thursday or Friday this week, sort of the next phase of that, which will include trying to get money directly into the hands of working families, trying to get money into the hands of people who need it to help them through this time, but also to try to, change some attitudes. I mean, I think we probably need to have a big discussion amongst your members and so many others around minimum wage, for example, and how we would increase that, and to try to sort of lift all of that up. And I think we need to have a better understanding of where our food comes from. What more can we be doing here to take a little bit more control over that? And you talk about diesel. I mean, diesel being, $2.50 or 60 cents, it's an incredible price. Everything that comes to our province and leaves our province, import and export, comes on wheels. So we're the end user, the end payer of all of that, and that's a significant challenge for us. And it's something that I think government needs to try to take a lead on, but I think it's something that collectively all of us as islanders need to play a better role in. And I don't think this is going to just disappear over time. I think this is going to be with us for a little while, and we're going to try to use every lever that we have and that we can to help islanders through this. But at the same time, the most difficult part of this job is knowing that I can't shield everybody from the fact that gas has gone up 50 cents since last year. I can't fill everybody's oil tank. I can't do all of those things, but we can try to end our reliance on some of those things and have programs and rebates in place to assist islanders to get there more quickly. But I think this is of all the crises that we've dealt with, and we've dealt with more than our share, that this is a very difficult and one with many different prongs, and it's going to take all of us to pull together to do that. And I hope government can be the leader to get the conversation started and to get some of those relief programs started to get us rolling. So,
well, very good. No, it is, as you say, very, very complex, and it affects everybody in some way. So actually, this kind of rolls into part of that, actually. Workforce shortages is another connection here. It's a sensitive topic for many of our members, is the ongoing workforce shortages we've continued to deal with for some time now and will for the foreseeable future. Lack of labor and varying skills in crucial industries, it will continue to hinder our growth in some ways until we can find some more long-term solutions. We recognize that wages are a factor, and businesses, I think, are always trying every day to ensure that their employees have a good income and bring that home with them. But the reality is there's many different reasons to blame for the workforce shortages right now. In March, our chamber held focus groups on the subject with representatives from targeted sectors and professions like tourism and hospitality, human resource specialists, professional services, skilled trades. There's no doubt that this issue requires all hands on deck, from government to our educational systems and of course the private sector. While many longer-term solutions have been started by the government, and we appreciate that, businesses don't necessarily have time to wait for some of those to come in. So what is being done by our government to address the workforce shortages and help advance PEI's economic growth while doing so, and how can the business community help support that?
well, I do think it is a partnership amongst many, but including the business community and government. It's an issue that seems to be across every sector. It's not just one sector, it's almost every sector. And that does pose a lot of very serious challenges for our growth, for sure. It's something that every jurisdiction across the country is dealing with. It's the number one thing we talk about at Atlantic Premiers meetings or Canadian Premiers meetings. It's something that nobody seems to have been able to just check a box and say we fixed this. What we have been trying to do, for example, is to work with our institutions such as Holland College and UPEI and others, and all of our educational partners. For example, we've identified a serious need in long-term care for resident care workers, for example. So we've worked with our partners, Holland College and others, to say what can we do in terms of being creative, help pay for all of that cost to get people into the field. And we've committed to training 200, for example, and we have all of those classes are full heading into the fall. So those are some opportunities that we have. We're trying to be creative in terms of how we can recruit and retain people here in Prince Edward Island, and how we can be leaders in that. But it's a difficult challenge, and the immediate knee-jerk is to say we have to pay people more, and we do. But for example, when we get into conversations with paramedics and other medical fields, for example, if we make this race to say, we'll pay $30, Alberta then comes out and says, we pay 33, and as a small jurisdiction with limited resources, we'll always lose that battle. So how can we find a way to remain extremely competitive, because we want people to have competitive and the best wages that we can have here, but also look at things like work-life balance and look at family balance, all of those things that maybe 20 years ago weren't top of mind when you were trying to recruit or retain employees, but now they're almost as critical as wages. So how we can change how we do those things are what we're trying to sort of lead that. Minister Hudson and I met last week or so with one of the paramedic classes at Holland College. And there was a lot of chatter, of course, it's been an issue that has been in the news a lot over the past number of months. But when you ask these students who are from all over the country who are being trained here, what would it take for you to stay here in Prince Edward Island? And wages is there, but it's also, some of the issues that we face here is, can I get a place to live? Can I get a family doctor? All of these things are all intertwined into that recruitment and retention of employees. So to be mindful and understanding of that, and then to use the resources that we might have to help make sure we can check a lot of those boxes. I see Rory Francis is here, and I know when we talked about working with BioVectra to expand with their vaccination, their mRNA facility that they broke ground to build here. And one of the big issues, and this is what really boggles my mind, from the time I worked with Pat Binns in the early 2000s, when you were attracting a business to PEI, the first thing they would say is, can you give us money to help with wages? But when you sit down and talk with BioVectra and some of these big companies who are coming here, they say, do I have access to childcare? Do I have access to health care? Can I live within the region where I'm going to work, and is there public transit? Are there enough flights to allow me to connect back into Cleveland or San Diego or wherever I'm coming from? So all of those things go into that complicated formula, along with, can I make a decent living and have access to all the services that I want? So I really think we're in a time of transition when it comes to business, when it comes to employees, to recruiting them and retaining them. And the more creative we can be, the more incentives that we can find, I think the better we're going to do. And I think we have a leading role to play in that. And I'm excited to make it. But I mean, that's another one that's going to be really, really difficult. We'll have to change the way we do things. We'll have to be open to changing things and realizing that the 8 to 5 workday is going by way of the dodo bird for a lot of these younger people who are coming up, younger professionals. They want to be able to have greater flexibility when they work, where they work, and how they work.
No, it's true. Changing priorities with everybody. And I guess a part of that would lead to my next question is another thing that comes up pretty frequently is with regards to immigration. In how it relates to the workforce, the reality is we want to grow our population, but not just for economic growth, but also to grow our island culture and communities. The Chamber hosted Canada's Minister of Immigration, Sean Fraser, in March, and he stated that he plans to do everything in his power to reduce red tape and find new pathways to encourage more newcomers to immigrate to Canada, and specifically Atlantic Canada, through the Atlantic Immigration Program. In saying that, the federal government is prepared to do everything they can to grow the population and strengthen our communities. What is your government doing to mirror, or better yet, amplify the efforts of the federal government in bringing new islanders and their families here to grow and hopefully strengthen our population and our culture as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've certainly done a really good job as a province in general. We continue to have the largest growth of population per capita. And that's largely due to immigration. I think that has also to do with the fact, and I think I might have mentioned this when I was here last year, that I think somewhere along the way in the last 10 or 15 years, we've changed the approach that we've taken to immigration. I mean, we used to, in a very horrible way, refer to immigrants as units because they were investment units through programs like the nominee program and et cetera. And now we've changed the focus of that to realize that they aren't units, they're actually people and their families, and we want them to be here. And I think because we've changed that approach, we've done a lot better. And we've done a lot better not just in bringing them in through this the vehicle of an Atlantic pilot, for example, but actually keeping them and making them established in the life of Prince Edward Island, which is I think what immigration should be about. I do think through the pilot, PEI has done better than every other jurisdiction through the Atlantic pilot, so that tells me we're doing something right. But again, it comes down to do we have enough housing? Do we have enough childcare? Do we have enough of the resources, not just in our main centers like Charlottetown and Summerside, but in our smaller locations? I feel, and that's why we implemented something like Toonie Transit, for example. So I think people can live and work in other places other than Charlottetown, Summerside, Cornwall, and Stratford. And because we can offer some of these services that weren't there before and continue to expand on those services, that helps in the overall product offering. I do think with Sean Fraser being in the neighboring, he neighbors our federal riding, but the Northumberland Strait is in the way, but he connects to us through his riding in Central Nova. He has a genuine interest to help grow immigration within the region, and I think there's a really good opportunity for us over the next couple of years to work with Sean to grow immigration here. But I think when he talks about red tape, we always throw around this term, we got to get rid of the red tape, but what does it actually mean? And what it means is how can we eliminate some of the barriers that are there a little bit more efficiently to get people relocated here that we need and who want to be here? So healthcare professionals, for example, if you're from a healthcare profession, the road you have to take to get established and have your credentials established in Canada, depending on where you come from or PEI, can be terribly, terribly cumbersome. And probably at some point you might say, I just might go somewhere else where it's a little bit easier. So we have to make that a little bit easier to recognize and be a little less territorial, I think I might say, in terms of what that process can be to help attract people here. But I do think we have a wonderful, safe place to live, a beautiful, clean place where we care about each other and we care about the environment and we care about all of the things that I think, regardless of where you come from in the world, those are fundamental values and principles that we can all share and relate to. And I think that has been an advantage for us. I think we also have growing sectors such as bioscience and IT and all of the manufacturing that we've really built and changed over the last 20 years that make this a really, really unique location for people to want to come and work. And what we've also learned through COVID is people can live here and work anywhere in the world, providing we make sure they have access to high-speed internet and other things like that. And that, I think, is one of the things we need to explore more. I don't want to, I know I'm talking way too long for this answer, but I'm passionate about it. I met last summer for 3 or 4 hours with Frank McKenna, and Frank has been a really strong leader and promoter of this region. But through the COVID experience, we talked about that we have probably accidentally carved out a really unique opportunity here where people wanted to get out of high rises in Toronto or larger cities and come here. And why wouldn't you want to work for a company in Mumbai, for example, but to do it in Basin Head, provided you can do it? What a unique opportunity. There would be no place in the world could offer those types of easy living and all of those attributes that people are looking for now and were magnified during COVID. And we need to sell that as a region, but most importantly, from my concern, we have to sell that as PEI. And we've probably anecdotally attracted a couple of thousand people over the last 18 months who have relocated here to PEI because it's safe, we care about each other, and it's good, easy living, and so we just need to do more of it. And I think that's how we grow, a lot of our workforce as well. Yeah.
Very good. It's not just international immigration now. It's interprovincial. It's everything like that. So we've covered workforce, cost of living, and immigration. I guess we'll try something a little lighter here for a minute. before we get into healthcare, so we just have a little interruption here. So, okay, so it's been 3 years now. If you could speak to Dennis King 3 years ago, what would you have to say?
Oh, I would maybe say that when all of these people who say they're your friends are calling you, maybe just let that go to voicemail for a while. You know, it's hard to believe in many ways it's been that long, but it also feels like it's been 5 lifetimes as well. It's really hard to say. I think anyone who runs for politics, and I know there are many of my colleagues here, and they would have made the same decisions that I made, is that I think you look at why you wouldn't want to do this, why you would want to do it. It can be nasty. You can end up in the newspaper, you know, all of the things you did in the past when you didn't think you were ever going to be anybody can come back to make news, and so there are lots of reasons why you wouldn't want to get into politics, but you also think about the responsibility and opportunity you might have to make a difference. And so I think I stopped. I don't know if I've ever said yes to running. I just stopped saying no, I think, and ended up here. But I honestly, as hard as the job has been and the crises that we've dealt with collectively, I never once woke up and said, I wish somebody else was here. I always tried to say, at least I'm here, I have the opportunity to make a little bit of a difference, and to try to, rather than just be one of those people on Twitter saying, why don't they do this? Well, I can actually go into the office and say, let's try this. And that's a really great opportunity. It's a lot of responsibility, it's a lot of pressure. We swing all day, but we don't hit the ball out of the park, and I know that, but perfection isn't the bar that I hold myself to. But I continue 3 years in to be grateful to be in the chair, to have the opportunity to work with people like you, to try to make a difference. And I think the minute that you wake up and say, I wish this was somebody else, is probably the time where you say, it's time for somebody else. But so far, I haven't gotten there yet, but every day maybe I get a little closer to it, I don't know. But no, and look, I as hard as it's been the greatest privilege and honor of my life to be in the job. So
good for you. All right, so we'll get back into it then.
Yes,
yeah, of course. So healthcare. It's an area that has obviously created immense pressure points, not just locally, but across the country and the world. The pandemic brought to light further gaps in our system that were likely unknown, or some that might have been, prior to COVID-19. A strong healthcare system allows communities to grow and thrive and to create a healthy workforce. There's no perfect solution to dealing with our healthcare. It's a very complex system, but your government has begun to make more steps towards long-term resolutions to some of the issues at hand. In saying that, we also emphasize that a healthcare system with issues is a huge deterrent from perhaps attracting and retaining people, as you touched on earlier. What is being done to address the major shortages and gaps in our healthcare system and when can Islanders expect the province to get back to a level of adequate healthcare?
Well, I mean, that is a complex question, and it's a complex issue. And I think if there's one thing that I'm proud of what we have done, even if many people haven't seen it yet, is that I think we have fundamentally changed how we operate in government when it comes to healthcare delivery services. So the hardest thing I have to do is to tell and instruct and help Minister Hudson and before that Minister Aylward to say, we are not going to be one of these governments that get involved politically to fix one little issue to cause problems, which I think have played a role, and I'm not blaming others for anything, but the way we have dealt with healthcare from a political perspective over the years has helped exacerbate some of the problems that are there. And so then when I sat down with both of those individuals, when I asked them to serve in the role, is we are not going to do that. We are going to let Health PEI build a long-term approach to dealing with these issues that should have been dealt with over the last 10 or 15 years. And you are going to take serious body blows. You are going to be the focus of legislative sessions and questions after questions. And it's going to take a long time before people actually see the systematic improvements that we're going to make. But we're going to move to a more collaborative model of healthcare delivery. We can't fall into the trap of promising a doctor that has been promised for 50 years and has never been able to be delivered upon. But what can we do to utilize the full services of the professionals in healthcare to give Islanders what they need first and foremost, and that is when you need to see somebody for healthcare services, there's some place for you to go and to get started. And that's what we're doing when you hear about neighborhoods and homes. We have 6 or 7 of these already in operation, but we've gotten away from going out and cutting a big ribbon and saying this is what we're going to build, only to not build it. Let's get this system operational, let's get it rolling, let's let people see that the differences are being made, and let's let the health professionals run this the way it needs to be run. So we've changed how we recruit. We have doctors helping us recruit doctors now, for example. We have a more dedicated and detailed approach to that, but we have a lot of problems, and we've never tried once to sugarcoat those problems, it is, even if you don't see it, the system is evolving, it's getting better. It will be different than the system maybe most of us grew up with, but the overall end goal will be to make sure when you're in need of healthcare service that you're in the right lane to get started, and you can then have access through a neighborhood or a home, whatever the term you want to call it is. When you go in there, there are family doctors, there are RNs, there's specialists, there's nurse practitioners, there's RNs, there's psychiatrists. There's a fleet of service within there who can help you get the health care you need as fast as we can provide it as close to home as possible. And it's a big undertaking. It's very, very far from perfect. I know that, I hear it every day. The patient registry list is now this, and it used to be that. And, we have committed to ourselves and to the staff and to the professionals in healthcare that we are on the path, we believe the path we're on, and we're not going to let just small p politics get in the way of this. So run health, let's get it rolling, let's get people to understand what we're able to provide, be honest with them what we can't provide, and to be open and innovative to finding the most creative solutions we can. So I really do feel when I look at Dr. Gardam and Dr. McNally and some of the culture changes we've made in terms of the overall day-to-day operation within Health PEI, I know it's getting better. I want you to see it getting better more and more on the front lines, and I know that's a frustration for Islanders, but I really don't want to be saying, let's just put this sign up and let's just do this because there might be an election coming. Let's just deal with healthcare in a very professional manner and try to provide the best service we can provide for Islanders. And Islanders will get a chance at some point to say through election that you're on the right path or you're not, and they will decide. But I'm proud of the way we've approached this. I'm frustrated it's taken so long. We've been in a 2-year pandemic along with everything else, so the professionals in healthcare have been strained and stretched, and the fact we've made as many strides as we have changing that culture has been impressive. But it's a grind, and I know it's a frustration for Islanders from tip to tip, but it's our long-term commitment is to make it better, and each day it gets a little bit better even if you don't see it.
Very good. Okay, you touched on one of these words in your last answer about innovation. This is more to do with innovation and competitive business environment right now. The Chamber has long advocated for a strong and competitive business environment, not only in the Greater Charlottetown area, but across the entire province. To do so, we must continue striving for more competitive edges, more innovation, more investment. At the start of the year, we saw PEI's small business tax rate drop to 1%. making it the most competitive in the region. And we saw significant investment in some of our more explosive sectors, such as bioscience, and to attract more business here. What are you doing as Premier to attract and develop business to the province and further to ensure the business community remains competitive?
Yeah, I really do think this is one of the areas where government needs to be in the passenger seat, and we have to let business, in many regards, help drive this. So if you look at bioscience as a great example, I know I've used this for a while, but government funds some of the fundamentals of that, but the businesses are inventive, and they're creative, and they're innovative, and government can assist in that process. But I think if this is something that government leads, it's subject to fail, quite honestly. But if you look at clean technology, for example, if we're looking for the solutions to greening our environment, to reducing our carbon, and to making a significant difference there, I think the best thing government can do is put some money into this and say, you're the smart people, go tell me how we fix this. Go tell me what clean technology is. Go tell me what the solutions are. Let's use your minds, and let's then get an idea and a concept ready to take to market, and then we can help build the business that comes along with that. So I think that's a big part of innovation, is allowing people to be creative, to incentivize them to be creative and to explore those opportunities. But I really do think, quite honestly, that it's still, as far as we've come in that regard, it's still there's a lot of untapped potential in Prince Edward Island. I tell everybody who comes, the easiest thing for government to respond to is a request for something that will lead to something important. So if somebody were to come to government, as they've had and said, why can't we put in a fund that will incentivize young islanders to build a spaceship, for example, and there's economy around that, we would look at that and say, well, absolutely, that's something that we should be doing. Can we work with UPEI? Can we work with high schools? Whatever it could be. But I think government needs to be kind of a passenger in that regard, work with groups like Chambers of Commerce and Business, and to say, you see this every day on the front lines. Where are we going here? How can we help you get there maybe a little bit faster? And how can we use the limited resources that we might have as government to incentivize and to make the strategic investments to get you there? So, I think, and we're unique because of our size. Because we're small, you can stop and talk to the Premier at Sobeys and say, hey, I got an idea for you. Or you can stop and see Matt McKay at the racetrack and say, would you be interested in investing in this? Not everybody has that, and not everyone is as nimble as we are to act as quickly on that. So that's an asset I think that we need to build upon, but I think government should be firmly in the passenger seat. Government should have strategic investment in all of these things. I think tax relief, leaving more money in the pockets of business helps you innovate, helps you do the things that you need to do, and that's a principle that I certainly believe in, and I'm glad we've gotten the small business rate to where it's at, and I think that allows companies to make more strategic decisions on, who knows your company better than you? Who knows where you need to go? I can surmise, I can suggest, but only the people who work in this every day are the ones who know where their competition is or where the competition is going. And I think our job would be to try to help to the best we can to help us get there, and hopefully be some of the leaders and to get there first and let others chase us.
Okay. Well, we're coming to the end here. But no good conversation with a bunch of business people would be complete without one about a budget. So, on the other side of things, the pandemic required some expensive but necessary funding to ensure islanders and businesses could stay on top of payments and keep their jobs and stay in operation. Our province and country have built up incredible deficits as a result, and we're grateful for what the governments have been so supportive, but someone has to pay for it all. Deficits like these can create uncertainty in an economy. So how does your government plan to take the mounting deficits and get our province back to a balanced?
Yeah, as I say, I think we're fundamentally ahead of where we thought we might be, and we do have the wherewithal to, through these difficult times, make the investments that need to be made through some deficit financing. You never sit down in government and say, let's get $100 million deficit. Like, that's not the way you think. We start off the process by saying, this is how much money we have to spend. And then we try to work within the departments and the envelopes, and in our case, the opposition parties with their requests, and we try to entertain all of those things and see where it fits in to the overall social, economic success or growth of Prince Edward Island. So over the past couple of years, we've had to respond. The federal government has responded in a big way, which has helped probably lessen the extent we initially thought, and I'm certainly grateful for that. But through these difficult times, you need to make those investments. A lot of times in business, you will, because you need to for factors, you'll need to increase your line of credit, for example, and that's just the reality. And so as government, we've tried to be responsible. Every single day we sit down through Minister Compton and her staff, and we look at where we're at. Why are we spending this? Why aren't we spending that? That's the responsible approach that you have to take to this. But we have the fundamental structure to do some deficit financing that we've done. We're on a 3-year trajectory to move our way out of that. A lot of the programs we invested in for COVID were term limited, so we were starting to make our way out of that. It's been longer than we thought. It's been pretty persistent, but we're on a trajectory to move our way out of that, and our economy continues to grow, which is making it a little bit easier to get our way through that. But the responsibilities won't change, but I think we all know, whether you run a household or whether you run a business or whatever, that the money has to come from somewhere, and you just can't keep adding to your debt and increasing your credit card limit. At some point, it's going to catch up. But we have our eye firmly on that, and I think when we meet with bond raters, for example, they see our fundamentals, they see where we're at, and they're supportive of the strategy, but they also know we can't sustain this for 5 or 6 more years. We have to find a way to be more creative. We have to find a way to change the way we fund some things, and maybe we have to make some difficult decisions down the road. But right now, we're fundamentally better than where we thought we would be. But I told this story before, that when we tabled the initial budget in March 2020, I think it was going to be like the 4th straight year for a surplus budget. And the way the fundamentals were looking is that I kind of thought I could be the first premier ever to have 4 surplus budgets. And in the span of 15 days, we went from here to here, and it was, that's just how quickly and volatile it had happened. But no, I think Minister Compton has done an amazing job keeping us accountable, and it's easy to sit there and say, yeah, that's a good idea, here's money. But you have to weigh that against so many things of why you would do that and what you create if you do that. And, the expectations of Islanders have only grown over the course of the last number of years. And it's really, really hard to be everything to everybody. And we try not to do that. But at the same time, when you're in a crisis like we're in now, it's you do have a duty and responsibility to try to respond to the best you can, and not to exasperate the problem by doing it. So it's a very difficult time we've been in, but we're in a good spot, I think, and I think we can work our way out of this without too much pain.
Best laid plans.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, we're kind of through the hard stuff here. We're just about time for lunch, I guess.
Okay.
So I guess one last simple, there's no such thing as a simple question anymore, I guess. When it came to when COVID-19 over the last 2+ years, were there elements of it, what were the elements of it that perhaps you disliked or were the biggest challenge? And alternatively, it's tough to say that there was a good thing that came from it, but was there silver linings involved in any of this?
Yeah. Well, there's been, I think, just seeing the overall goodness and kindness of Islanders looking out for one another has been, I think we always felt that, but to see it every day, the way that we've responded, I think that to me has been a silver lining. But there's been economic silver linings. Or, I mean, our bioscience industry wasn't just COVID-proof, it just exploded. You know, I think that's amazing. You know, I think, but, I mean, nobody wants to go through that. I mean, nobody wants to have to live through that, and it's been a horrible experience for all of us, particularly those who've lost loved ones and, you know, through sickness and you know, so it's been there's been a lot of horrible things that have happened, but just the overall response, the adherence to the overall health of each other as opposed to individual wealth or individual concern that we've seen in other jurisdictions, it has been heartwarming to me. You know, it's been important to see that, and you know, overall, you know, our province is more resilient. It's probably more together. And that's a good thing. But we sure could have done without it. I will to be honest.
Yeah, I think everyone would agree with that one.
Yeah.
I think that concludes our little no fire fireside chat.
Okay.
And we'll get ourselves ready. We'll head next door for lunch, and we have our keynote speaker, Martin Root, will be here. So
Perfect, yeah.
should be good. Thanks for joining us
Well,
today.
thank you
Appreciate
all
your
very
time.
much. It's a really great privilege to be here. And just thank you for all you do and all you've done to get through this. It's many people stop myself or Dr. Morrison and say thank you, but it's all of you and so many others who have done all of the work. And look, you managed to keep the shingle out. You've managed to keep the business operational. You've managed to keep people working through this most difficult time when there were really, really dark days. So thank you for that. And you've done a great service to your province along the way. So thank you. It's really been impressive.